Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football at American Conference Media Days. We're joined by SMU head coach Sonny Dykes. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing just fine. I have to think that all that you've been through as a head coach and assistant coach, that the experience of coaching players that you'd only known for a few days in that bowl game last year was a bit different.
It was. It was a very unique experience. Was something that was challenging. I mean, I knew going in it was going to be a challenge. I didn't have time to learn the offense or the defense or really, the players for that matter, because it was the same day as the early signing period. And so we were going to have to sign 5 or 6 kids in that period, and so it was a real challenge trying to recruit, trying to figure out who was going to sign early and who wasn't, and then trying to get a team ready to play in a bowl game. So, I made a couple of practices. Didn't really know the players. I mean, the funny thing was after we signed guys that morning, I was looking at the media guide trying to learn the players' names, as we're getting ready to coach in a bowl game. So it wasn't an ideal situation, but I thought it was the right thing to do. I felt like those players, they needed a head coach and they needed somebody to come and take over. And, things didn't go particularly well that night, but it was great for me. I had a chance to get to know the players, to evaluate them. And I think they had a chance to get to know me as well. And we had a chance to build a relationship and earn some trust, I think, on both sides. And so, was not a great situation in the short term, but I think it's going to end up being a good long-term thing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the SMU situation, the American Conference, you've been around. What makes this situation a little bit different than some of the other programs that you've led, and just the environment of the program, the recruiting footprint, and so forth?
Well, I think for me, I grew up in Texas and, started as a high school coach really in the Dallas area. And so, it's home in a lot of ways. And so when you go home and you're around an environment that you're comfortable with, I think that it gives you a leg up. It really does. I mean, I had relationships with a lot of high school coaches, knew a lot of guys, knew the programs to recruit, knew who to contact in order to recruit those guys, had a good sense of the kind of players we were going to get from certain programs. And so it allowed us to really, jump in there the first year recruiting. You're always scrambling when you take over a program, and it allowed us to make some good decisions and go find some really good football players. And so I felt like we had a lot of success with our first class. Recruiting this year is off to a great start. We're almost done with our recruiting class right now in terms of our commitments, and we have a really good class. And so, college football is about two things: it's recruiting and player development. And so, when you're comfortable and you have a knowledge of your surroundings, then it really allows you to get off to a much faster start.
Based on what your dad was able to accomplish and what you learned from him, how much did you take from him that you still see in your approach, and how much of it's maybe unique to some other stops and some other things that you've picked up, or just unique to your own vision?
Well, it's interesting. Every time you go someplace, it's you have different strengths and you have different weaknesses. Every single school that you coach at, there's things that you think are gonna be advantages, and they end up being maybe not as advantageous as you thought. And there's some deficits that you think that aren't as significant maybe as you thought before you went there. And so, that's one of the things I've learned in coaching is every stop along the way is different. Every challenge is different. Every strength is different. And so it's what you have to do is you got to get a really good assessment of your program, try to figure out, what you can build on, try to address the weaknesses in that particular program. And the great thing about, again, SMU and being in Texas is, we were able to make those decisions much faster than we were other places. We have a really good idea of who to recruit, how to recruit them, what our strengths at SMU are, and what they're not. And so one of the things I learned from my dad, I think, is that, you can't just walk in and throw a manual down and say, okay, here's how we're going to do it, and here's how we did it at Ohio State, or here's how we did it at Michigan, or whatever. Because you're going to have to do things differently at SMU than you are at Michigan or Ohio State, and you're going to have to do them differently at Louisiana Tech than you had to at Texas Tech. And so, you have to adjust as a coach, and you have to understand that, again, every situation is unique and different.
So, as a head coach, how much are you just tunnel visioned on your program, your players, what's going on day to day, just so entrenched, versus how much of the landscape of the conference, the nation, are you taking in?
Well, obviously, you want to know what's going on with your competition and what they're doing, and how they're approaching things. But at the same time, you have to do what's best for your program. You have to worry about yourself. You can't really control what anybody else is doing, and so. For us at SMU, we have to do a great job recruiting. We have to do a great job developing guys, and so player development's really strength and conditioning, and then coaching. And so we have to address those two areas. I'm really excited about the hire that we made as our strength coach, Kaz Kazadi. I think is one of the elite strength coaches in college football. That hire is going to pay off hugely for us. I think it's going to pay dividends not only this year, but certainly as we move forward in our program. Your strength coach creates so much of your culture in your program, and he has done a remarkable job getting our guys bigger and stronger and faster. But the thing I'm most proud of is just the culture that he's helped us develop so far. That'll be put to test early in the season. When we play the first 4 games that we're going to play, really challenging games. But we have to deal with adversity better and learn those type of things. And I think that schedule will do that, and hopefully, Kaz has those guys prepared in that regard. So. I think you always have to keep your eyes open to what other people are doing and how they're doing it. But at the end of the day, you have to develop your players. You have to recruit. You have to develop. And if you'll make yourself better day in and day out, then it's going to make your program better in the long run.
Based on what you saw in the spring, based on what you're hearing of summer individual workouts, and then heading into what you're going to see in 2 weeks, what gives you optimism? What are you still concerned about?
Well, coming out of spring, I was really concerned about our depth in a number of places, particularly, on the offensive line, particularly at the defensive back, and particularly at wide receiver. And so those were 3 things coming out of spring. We thought, we're going to have to improve these positions. The good thing was we had 3 really good players that didn't go through spring training that were all good defensive players. We had a safety, a linebacker, and a corner that were some of our better defensive players that didn't participate in spring ball. So getting those guys back healthy and seeing what they can do, in summer conditioning and has made me more encouraged. We have to continue to develop size and strength and depth on our offensive line. That's going to be unfortunately a longer term process maybe than addressing some of the other issues, and that's just the way it works with offensive linemen. We signed 2 junior college players that we're excited about that give us some more size and some strength up front. As I said earlier, Kaz has done a really good job developing our offensive line, and we've added about 15 pounds per man to those guys up front. That's going to help us stay healthy, and it's going to make us a little bit more powerful and stronger than we've been in the past at that position. And then we've been able to address the wide receiver position with hopefully a grad transfer here and there, a transfer in, and just developing the guys that we have within our program. So, I think we're going to be one of those teams that's going to really benefit from the grad transfer rule. We're going to have a number of guys that are going to really provide some depth and create some competition for us. Okay, appreciate it.